and subsequently after the research was finished, these people were actively in there leading and doing it. So, conclusions. On the face of it, questions of agency, diverse agendas, government or whatever, exogenous, endogenous. You might look at poorly managed engagement. Here I'm talking about Housing New Zealand. Those factors might be thought to have a critical bearing on the ability of a community internet group to share knowledge, but individual level dynamics between opinion leaders and opinion seekers appear to be able to override such issues. So on, looking at this superficially, Case A was a disaster in implementation, but it was where the greatest success was achieved. So I had an expectation that perhaps things weren't going to look so great at the end of, or after a year or two at that site, but actually surprisingly that was where the best success was being experienced. So a grassroots agenda driven by those with interpersonal influence through their networks of strong ties may prevail and contribute to sustainability, with impetus coming from the group itself. And what I will suggest, or what has been apparent, because I know the National Coordinator of Computers and Homes quite well, she's a friend actually, she has been sort of aware of what this research has been showing and she's made use of it. And what I want to be able to do more of is to advise or contribute more to the implementation of it on the basis of what I've been finding, that it's what it has to be about is using the relational resources already present and being able to identify those and leverage off those for greater social support and success. But I guess I would have a question in my head, as also there are many questions about my role as a researcher and an outsider, and we won't go into all of that, but when you've got people on the outside coming in, is this appropriating and imposing external solutions all over again? I won't try to answer that. So this was small scale, but it was incredibly rich, and I've just got so much material that didn't get anywhere near here. And so, you could say that a limitation is its scale and the number of people involved. But it did produce some leads, and it would suggest that there's some, practical validity, practical use, practical significance for studies in social epistemology. In this case, because it's produced leads that can help to adapt or even redesign a social institution, make it work better. So certainly the outcomes are applicable to policy and also to practice to harness the social resources already present. I'm also now, having looked yesterday at the ideas of Charles Ledbetter, I've got to look into more about social entrepreneurship, because it would seem to me that these figures that I'm talking about, the leaders, high technology users, they have great potential as social entrepreneurs, and that seems to be a kind of a whole new area for me to read more about in terms of citizen and community activism. And so what I come to at the end is a rejection of a deficit model, not looking at a community in terms of what it lacks, but more what does it already have. Things I learned, if I may briefly say, seize on opportunities. This was an opportunity handed to me, or I could have walked on by and not taken it, but somebody said something in 2002, which is computers and homes is under-researched. A little bell went off and I thought, and I went and followed up on it. Wouldn't pay to do that too often, I guess, because there are too many research projects failure. I learned along the way, it's not what happens. There were some very big downsides to doing this, but I'm so happy that I've done it. It's what you learn about dealing with that.
there will always be adversity, but the travails have a purpose. At least that sounds a bit fatalistic, doesn't it? It was written in a hurry. Maybe that's a bit sort of a bit gloomy. Yeah, but you can never expect research to be smooth and ideal and easy. It's just not going to happen, and things will happen in your own life that get in the way. But, you know, I always held it as an article of faith for me that nobody had tied my hand behind my back and forced me to sign on the dotted line saying that I'd do this thing. So I never wanted it to become other people's issue. My family, my friends or my colleagues. I didn't want to whine about it, and I don't think I did. You might say otherwise. But you know, we do these things, I think, from a deep commitment from somewhere within that we want to do it. And however, I did hear it once described in a conference seminar from an experienced PhD supervisor who told the assembled audience that doing a PhD is a bit like going on a solo trip to Mars. Because, and why it is like that is that you can't share it with anybody. And even your partner, your nearest and dearest, their eyes glaze over, or they can't really understand. And so it does become very much a solitary thing, and perhaps it's a selfish thing. But I did hear the very useful phrase, keep the boulder rolling. It was only when I was writing up my acknowledgements for my thesis and I wanted to include this, because it was very important and useful advice that what you've got in front of you is this massive rock, and once it's kind of moving, it's good. But if you let it roll to a stop, it's just so hard to get it started again, so you just got to chip away at it, even if it's a paragraph a day or a week. But I read about the legendary Sisyphus who was condemned by the gods, or whatever the word is, to push a boulder uphill, but as soon as he got to the top it would roll back down again. So I'm glad that mine's now rested at the top. So where to from here? I'm now really interested in reading more about social entrepreneurship, community activism, and with, of course, all the developments in social media. There's so much more I can do on the basis of what I've got here. And I've been invited, that idea of the power of the lateral connection, I think that's been demonstrated in the work that I've done. I've been invited to chair the new South Auckland Computers in Home Steering Committee, which hopefully won't be a hugely onerous thing, but it will keep me in contact with the number of communities in that area who are using computers in homes, and I can hopefully feed back in what I have discovered and kind of be a useful guiding presence. So I'm looking forward to that. So I think, yes. Can I take 4 more minutes? Because on this website of Charles Leadbeater, there's this quite dinky little 4 minute, and to me it's kind of like the new direction for me now, and it's expressing that idea that I explained to you before, that he regards the previous centuries about mass production and consumption, and now with new technologies, communities and issues and problems all over the world requiring solutions. He's seeing tremendous advantage to be had in successful use by communities of new technologies.